Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Gittin, pages 33 through 39, Lamed Gimel through Lamed Tet. 33. Kol de Mekadesh adata de Rabbanon Mekadesh. A very famous Talmudic expression that anyone who gets married on condition that the sages, the rabbis, approve of this union and the manner in which this union was solemnized. And if the sages feel that the manner in which this kiddushin, this sanctification betrothal occurred, is in violation of the norms of rabbinic Judaism, then the sages can strip away the man's kiddushin, and the wedding is invalid. So the Gemara asks an obvious question: Tenach Kaddish Bekaspa. I understand if the kiddushin occurred by way of an item of value, money, kesef. So the sages have the authority to extract the money or ownership of that money from the man, and it's as though it never occurred. However, Kaddish B'Bia Michael Amemor, if the marriage was finalized by way of bia of sexual relations, then how can you eliminate that from history? It occurred. What was done was done. The answer is the rabbis can retroactively declare that that act of intimacy that occurred was not for matrimonial purposes, but rather was mere fornication for no mitzvah purpose whatsoever. Lamed Dalet 34. Originally, when they would write a get, they would have one version of this person's name, the man's name, the wife's name, her city, his city. There would be only one version of all those names and place names. However, we know that people have nicknames, and places are referred to by multiple designations, and it might be confusing if you only have one of them. Hitkin Rabbi Gamliel Azakin. So Gamliel the elder made a ruling. Shekotev ish ploni v'chol shum sheyesh lo, isha plonis v'chol shum sheyesh la. Taken olam that now will include not only the man's real name, but all the nicknames he goes by, and her real name and all the nicknames she goes by, in order to protect people from a problem where the get might be regarded as invalid because the person is not known by the name that appears on the piece of paper. That Tikkun Olam, for improving the situation, we want to make sure that everybody is identified appropriately in the get. Lamed Hey. If a Kohen marries women who are forbidden to him, there's an Avera, there's a sin involved here. Pasul, he's not allowed to do the temple service until he forswears any benefit from this wife. Now, notice he doesn't actually have to divorce her just yet in order to return to the good graces of the temple. He simply has to swear he's not going to benefit from her, which is a prelude to an eventual divorce. V'tani Allah, and what do we say is the sequence? No dare, he makes the promise. V'ovedi does the temple service. Yovedi comes down from the altar of doing the temple service. Umegaresh, and then divorces the wife. So while he's up there on the Mizbeach, he makes the promise, and that's good enough as long as he divorces her when he gets back down. Lamed Vav, 36. Is there any scenario whereby the sabbatical year, which ordinarily will cause loans, debts, owed from one Jew to another, to be canceled? Do you ever have a scenario where under Torah law, the sabbatical year does not cancel that particular debt for whatever quirky reason, but the rabbis will say that it does cancel the debt? So the problem with that is the rabbis would then be arbitrarily grabbing money from one person to another who doesn't under Torah law deserve it. So Abaye says, yes, it is possible. We could justify it by the means of chevi al taseh, that sit back and do nothing. Meaning, the cancellation of the debt means not that an action will take place, but rather no action will take place. No return of money will occur. So chevi al taseh means sit back and do nothing. In this instance, the debtor will not pay the creditor. Because under Torah, under rabbinic law, there was a shmitat kasafim, a cancellation of the debt. Alternatively, Rava says, hefker beitin hefker. The ability of the court to declare things ownerless is a very powerful ability that they have, and they did so in this instance. Lamed Zayin. Minayin lebal chov shekona mashkon. How do you know from Torah that a creditor who's holding on to a piece of collateral, a physical item of collateral that was given to him by the debtor, that the creditor really owns this collateral item, at least in the short term, in a full sense of the word? Because it says in Torah that regarding the nighttime garments of the poor person, which was used as collateral that have to be returned so that the poor man can sleep in those articles of clothing at night, it's considered a tzedakah, act of charity by the creditor to give it back to the debtor. So the Gemara says, if it wasn't really acquired by the creditor, it wouldn't be considered an act of charity for him to give it away. It would just be a compliance with the law. So for the fact that it mentions a tzedakah, from here we see Baal Chov Kona Mashkon, that the creditor really does acquire the piece of collateral in the intervening time. Lamed Chet, 38. Anyone who emancipates his Canaanite slave violates a positive commandment of the Torah. Because it says in the Torah that they shall work for you forever, that your Canaanite slave population shall be in your family's possession in perpetuity, midor lador, from generation to generation. So if you were to emancipate one of them, that is contravening an aseh, an affirmative, a positive commandment. But we have a story where the commandment was violated, but maybe for good cause. Masechet Rabbi Eliezer, there was an incident involving Rabbi Eliezer. Shenichnas b'beis hakneses, he went into a shul. They couldn't get a minyan. He didn't find a minyan. And what happened? They had 9, and the 10th guy was this slave. Shichra Avdo Vishtimala Asara. By emancipating the slave, that turns the Eved Kenani into a full-fledged Jew who can then count in a minyan, and lo and behold, there was your minyan. So how do we justify this if it's a violation of an aseh to do that? And the Gemara answers, mitzvah shiny. For the purpose of fulfilling a mitzvah, things are different. Elsewhere, the Talmud, it says mitzvah de rabim shiny. A communal mitzvah is different. After all, this is davening b'tzibur, the community, the congregation, and you need to get the job done. Lametet. Ger shemei, a convert who died, ubizbizu yisrael nachasav, and the other Jews were taking his possessions, because this convert had no heirs, had no relatives, and so now it's a free-for-all who gets his stuff. So the ger had slaves, avadim kananim, whether they were younger, they were older. So they whatever the age was, they acquired their freedom by virtue of having been ownerless temporarily. Abishol says no, the older ones, the adults, acquire their freedom, whereas the minors do not automatically acquire their freedom, because they happen to be minors, and whoever grabs them and does a chazaka on them now owns them, because they're available for the taking. I hope everyone has a great week.